I have been recommended a video. I believe that this is the original, the main channel, Piers Morgan Uncensored. I've been recommended a video from the original Piers Morgan Uncensored channel. A good old classic Piers Morgan segment where he is joining in on a completely nonsense, made-up scandal, and that's doing a lot of heavy lifting, about Tim Walz claiming that his accepting Somali immigrants into Minnesota as governor is some kind of fraudulent, evil attack upon his own people. They are trying to make a scandal out of this where it just doesn't exist. There is no scandal. It's made up. There's a reason why the only outlets covering this are far-right ones. It is a completely manufactured narrative. But apparently Piers Morgan has decided to host a debate on his panel show, his very biased right-wing panel show. I hate Piers Morgan, by the way. On this topic. No doubt he is going to have a blatant bias in favor of the anti-Tim Walz, anti-immigration side of things, because despite being British and more or less unaffected by the actions of Donald Trump, he is a massive Donald Trump dick rider and talks about American politics as if it actually affects him. And in the ways that it does, ironically, he is only hurting himself. The rest of the world's economy relies on the health of the United States economy, and what Donald Trump has not done anything to help the economy of the UK, which is where Piers Morgan, I believe, lives, so he should not be in favor of this, but he's got enough wealth that he can insulate himself from the consequences of the politics that he shills for. He's a grifter. It's a long-winded way of saying he's a grifter, and I have no respect for him. Before we dive into this video, though, into this debate, I should say, then consider leaving a like and a comment down below if you want to boost this video in the algorithm and support it. It really does help a lot. Subscribe and ring the bell icon if you want YouTube to tell you when I go live or upload in the future and you want to see more from me. It really does help as well. And be sure to hype the video if you've commented enough in the past that you've unlocked the hype button and you want to directly boost the video. That helps too. If you don't know what to comment down below. Pierce. Like piercing a balloon. Piers Morgan. Say that, actually. Just go fully into it. And yeah, it helps a lot, and I appreciate it. Thank you. And without any further ado, let's get into it.
I'll be honest with you, okay? Somebody would say, oh, that's not politically correct. I don't care.
Vote for me so we can kick every dirty Muslim out of Texas.
I don't fear the groomers. I don't fear the pedophiles. I don't fear the corrupt politicians. And I definitely do not fear the dirty Muslims.
Valentina.
God damn. Talk about a woman who knows how to grift. Jesus Christ. I am excited to see Piers Morgan attempt to launder this lady's reputation. This is what is considered no longer racist to say in America now. This is how far right the Overton window has shifted on a social level.
Is just a bigot, plain and simple, and you can tell by looking at her that her IQ hovers around room temperature.
Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth have killed more people than Jeffrey Dahmer with his illegal strikes.
Dude, I've killed more people than Jeffrey Dahmer, and I don't think I'm a bad guy.
Isn't that the guy who is like one of the million guys who claims to have killed bin Laden?
The scale of the Minnesota fraud scandal is jaw-dropping by anyone's measure. More than $1 billion has been illicitly drained from welfare programs, mostly by members of the large Somali community.
Piers actually called her a bigot, Zan. Oh, are we going to have a rare Piers W here? Maybe I spoke too soon.
At least some of that money is thought to have ended up in the coffers of Islamist terror group Al-Shabaab. And some of the early attempts to investigate this mass fraud were reportedly silenced over fears of racism. We've seen this story before. There's uncomfortable echoes of a UK grooming scandal in which the systematic abuse of young white girls by mostly Pakistani men was shamefully ignored over fears of stoking racial tensions. But just as it's absurd and abhorrent to argue that every British Muslim man is a rapist, it's clearly wrong to say that every one of the 16,000 Somalians in the US are...
It's so interesting to me how the same people who say there is a demographic, someone always has to be in first place when it comes to who commits a crime the most, right? There's always going to be some group in first place. But I love how these people will point out, okay, maybe we need to have a conversation about why a certain group is in first place when it comes to being represented in a certain crime, right? And in this case, it's Pakistani men committing rapes against young girls. Horrible thing, of course. We all agree on that. But these same people who call that out get real touchy when feminists and leftists and progressives try to have a conversation about why so many certain crimes are highly overrepresented by white men, such as school shootings. What is socializing young men to commit acts of mass violence in such disproportionate numbers compared to any other demographic? That's a conversation the leftists wanted to have for years, and the right gets bristly about it. And yet these are the same people who say, well, why are Pakistani men making up the majority of rapes of young girls? Why not black men? Why not white men? Why not any other group of people? Someone has to be in first place. I'm sure there's a conversation to have there, but I'm not even like fully buying into that someone has to be in first place argument. I'm just making the case that I feel like there is a hypocrisy there. Like, if you're willing to have one conversation, you should be willing to have the other. And I'm not willing to have either conversation, or I guess I'm not willing to have the Pakistani conversation with someone who's not willing to have the other conversations.
Thieves. That's why many are unhappy with some of the rhetoric pouring from the White House.
I hear they ripped off Somalians, ripped off that state for billions of dollars. Billions.
Billions.
Every year. Billions of dollars. And they contribute nothing. The welfare is like 88%.
They absolutely do not contribute nothing, by the way. In fact, do you want to know who the biggest welfare sinks in America are? It's rural, right-wing, white communities. That's right. Donald Trump's core. Those are the communities that eat up all the welfare and contribute practically nothing to taxes. You realize that rural communities, property tax-wise, they pay practically nothing. That's why their schools suck shit and are underfunded. It's why, like, they have miles and miles and miles of road for, like, 10 people that live on it. And yet they have to be upkept, and the state has to keep them, the state and city have to keep them well-maintained. And a million other factors. You've got, like, 10 different restaurants spread out over the course of, like, 25 miles in the average American small town? Guess what? Those all have to be seen by health inspectors and upkept on, like, what, a biannual basis, I think? That's a whole other avenue of money. The amount of money the federal government pours into rural communities and the lack of payout they get for it is insane. White rural Americans are welfare queens. They are the ones who are a black hole of our tax dollars. No one's willing to have that conversation, though.
They contribute nothing. I don't want them in our country, I'll be honest with you, okay? Somebody said,
imagine using the same logic about native-born white rural Americans. Trump would never.
oh, that's not politically correct. I don't care. I don't want them in our country. Their country's no good for a reason. Their country stinks, and we don't want them in our country. I could say that about other countries, too.
It's blatantly racist.
Anyone who thinks the president himself is an Islamophobe might want to check with the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia or the Emir of Qatar.
You're such a fucking retard, bro. You're such a retard. There are such worse slurs I want to use to describe Piers Morgan for that. Donald Trump's willingness to suck the dick of Qatar and Saudi Arabia, who literally give Donald Trump literal gold-plated bribes, means that he can't be Islamophobic. Trump is willing to accept a gold-plated superjet, the biggest and most valuable superjet in the world, if I'm not mistaken. He'll take that from the leaders of Qatar, and so he can't be Islamophobic. Okay.
But there's no doubt that his words carry weight with the people who support him. And just as we saw in the aftermath of a National Guard terror attack carried out by an Afghan immigrant who'd worked with the CIA, many think it's now open.
That's like saying, despite the majority of Jeffrey Dahmer's targets being gay men, that he wasn't homophobic. If we're going to use the serial killer analogy. Like in effect, he was homophobic. His murder victims were mostly gay men. And like, so you can argue he wasn't homophobic because he was gay or he was sexually attracted to men, but he killed so many gay men. Calling him not homophobic feels like a stretch.
Season on all Muslims. Republican congressional candidate Valentina Gomez, who's listening in and joins us shortly, posted this.
Texas, I've officially filed to become your next congresswoman. So the choice is yours. Vote for me so we can kick every dirty Muslim out of Texas. For me, this is just an election. But for you and your daughter...
Dude, the Latino conservatives are so desperate to get the right refocused onto Muslims and Arabs instead of Latinos. The Latino hate, no doubt, has not been fun for Latino conservatives, and they are probably thrilled that the direction is starting to flip back towards Islamophobia being the trend.
This is your life, because Texas has only gotten more Muslim under these weak Republicans. New York City already fell to Islam, so did Michigan and Minnesota, and you're next in line. If Texas falls to Islam, it's simply because you didn't vote correctly. God bless you all.
Imagine how badly this backfires if all these blue states end up holding out the best throughout the next 4 years and all of a sudden Islam looks really appealing. It's like, damn, that socialist Islam Sharia law in New York City seems pretty appealing right now. New York City has seen marked improvements in the quality of living and affordability of living. And meanwhile, everywhere else, especially red states, it's gotten worse. Imagine if all this like shit talking ends up making like socialism and Sharia law look good.
Well, many people who railed against woke identity politics, including myself, said they were doing so because they believe in a free market meritocracy. Judge people by what they do and not what they are. Stop dividing everybody into fighting factions based on skin color or religion and claiming your team is under existential attack. Security and immigration is a separate debate, and we're going to have it in a moment. But I have a simple message for everybody now blaming every Muslim for every one of their problems.
Is security and immigration really a separate debate if so many people use their motivation to judge people by what they are and not who they are as a like if that's what guides their politics and their policy decisions around immigration and border security, can you really argue they're separate issues?
And we'll debate all this with my panel in a moment, but joining me now is Tricia McLaughlin, the Assistant Secretary for Public Affairs at the Department of Homeland Security.
Hey,
welcome.
bud.
First of all, there are lots of legitimate issues with immigration in the United States, as indeed there are in my country. And I've said this a few times on my show recently, that I think most Americans agree with the extraordinary success of the Trump administration in basically shutting down the southern border after how porous it was under the Biden administration. Most Americans I've spoken to agree that if an undocumented...
On a polling level, I don't think that might be true. But on a general level, Donald Trump's approval rating has tanked, and it's in large part due to how he's ruined the economy. You can say that people approve of the immigration lockdowns, but are we going to continue to ignore the elephant in the room that is the blatant results of it? Like, as much as you can keep on appealing to popularity as much as you want, but when reality has gotten so blatant to show that the popular opinion is just wrong and stupid and self-destructive, you got to accept the truth eventually.
Documented person in the United States commit to crime separate to their status, they should be deported. The flashpoint comes when you get to the next stage, which is people who are being rounded up and perhaps deported simply for being undocumented, and that's a more contentious issue. But we now have a new flashpoint in this debate following the appalling attack on the National Guard by an Afghan who'd been brought here obviously from the war, where
yeah, they're all obsessed with that.
With America and the allied forces there. But you also have this issue with the Somalians. I guess my question for you is, can we make forceful points about these things without descending into what many people think is deeply inflammatory rhetoric? Whether it's what I just quoted there from Valentina Gomez about dirty Muslims, or whether it's the president himself, calling Somalia garbage and all the rest of it.
Honestly, I don't care about this part. I want to see the spicy debate. I want to see when shit starts getting racist. I'm here to see some racism, goddammit.
Such as potentially lining their
I skipped
own
ahead
pockets
quite a
where
bit
they
here.
even actually helping. But that is, of course, something we are working incredibly closely with the Department of War on.
Tricia McLaughlin, Assistant Secretary of State for Public Affairs. Thank you very much indeed. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Piers.
Well, joining me to debate...
Might I interrupt for a moment to say, holy shit, website chat is whiter than a salt flat right now. We need an oiler to drop a gifted sub bomb or something. That is a white chat. That is a white website chat.
All of this is Rob O'Neill, the former US Navy SEAL who served extensively in Afghanistan and killed, of course, Osama bin Laden, the Republican congressional candidate Valentina Gomez, the Palestinian-American journalist Omar Badr, plus author, activist, and attorney Qasim Rashid. Well, welcome to all of you. Rob O'Neill, great to have you back on Uncensored, as always. You've served in Afghanistan. This is a complex issue, isn't it? Because there are many Afghanis who helped America in the war against the Taliban, for example, who then got brought back to the United States. And this can include translators or people who actually fought alongside Americans or whatever it may be, but who performed a valuable public service for America, who were brought back to the United States. And the fear about them is that in the light of this dreadful attack on the National Guard members, which was a clear terrorist attack by one of these people who's just gone rogue or maybe got radicalized, we just don't know yet the full story. But whatever it was, it caused him to commit double murder. That in the process of working through how this gets resolved, there's a potential for a lot of these Afghanis to be sent back to Afghanistan. Well, I would think they would face immediate threats to their lives and possible death.
Deporting Afghans is like the worst fucking thing we can do in regards to deportations. For those who don't know, a lot of Afghans in America served with our armed forces, and because of that, they got special expedited visas to get into the United States, particularly in the lead up to the pullout. Because if you help the United States, if you helped our soldiers, if you helped our boys in green, then you are literally on the wanted list of the Taliban. They want your head. They want to lock you up in a fucking jail cell, maybe even lock up your family and torture them in front of you. Like, there are some brutal consequences depending on how and what you helped the U.S. government do during the 20 years that we were that we were in Afghanistan. And a lot of those Afghans are here, and should they ever step foot back in the country again, the Taliban will be coming for them. The Taliban runs the country. I believe in the northern provinces there were some rebellions for a time, but I don't think they saw much success, unfortunately. The Taliban basically has uncontested control of Afghanistan, and they will kill any Afghans we send back. Just for having ran off to America, they might kill any Afghans that we send back.
Well, Piers, you said it correctly when I think the word you use is complex, because that's the simplest way to say it. It's very, very complex, and there's so many different avenues. When I think of guys that we worked with coming back here, I'm very familiar with that. When I was over there running an outstation in Jalalabad, Afghanistan, we were hiring locals, and I remember just, parts of Hearts and Minds is to, build the economy, hire electricians, hire plumbers, house security, hire cooks.
This guy's usually a bullshit artist, but everything he's saying here is accurate. He did serve, and he did serve in Afghanistan. He's going to give a lot of good info here. There were a lot of Afghans who did rural, to break down things simplistically, the Taliban was made up primarily of, the Afghan equivalent of rural hick militias. Way back in the day, pre-Cold War, Afghanistan, outside of its big cities, was populated broadly throughout the mountains and countryside by a variety of different tribes, literal tribes. And these were very conservative, traditional tribes that lived by a strong Islamic code. And a big part of that was they weren't big on imperialism and having their land annexed from them, having a foreign power roll in and start taking over. So when Soviet Russia came to start, basically annexing Afghanistan, taking over, and puppeting it, the United States started arming these tribal factions into becoming fully armed U.S.-backed militia groups that we gave funding to. We fought a proxy war against the Soviet Union through these militia groups, which later became known as the Mujahideen, our brave Mujahideen allies in Afghanistan. And of course, after we left, and after the Soviets left, big old power vacuum, and sure enough, they become a somewhat organized, radical Islamist group that wants to basically take over the entire country and impose their rule over it. They also have strong ties with Al-Qaeda and a lot of other militant Islamic regimes and terrorist groups. Any group that flies the banner of jihad, like fighting a holy war for the Islamic faith and Islamic people, they will typically have some support for. So as you can imagine, post 9/11, there were some good reasons to roll into Afghanistan and be like, no, we're gonna try to do some nation building here. We're gonna try to do a little bit of nation building, and that was our method to try and solve the problem, was to go for the root of it, which was the crime, the bad economy, the political radicalism, the the people living in a bad situation is not conducive to people living normal, adjusted lives and avoiding radicalism, And the goal was to nation build and to build a relationship between U.S. soldiers and the people in Afghanistan. And so in rural communities, when you went out into the countryside as a U.S. soldier, every turn, every corner, every turn of your wheel in your vehicle could be the death of you at any time. Hell, turning the key in the ignition for your vehicle could be the death of you, because they like to plant IEDs on cars all the fucking time. In the cities, people were more liberal. more progressive. The majority of the population of Afghanistan lives in cities, like in any other place in the world. And because of that, most of Afghanistan was pretty hyped on the U.S. being there, especially in the last 10 years of our occupation, when that good old democracy started to get affected, when women started to be able to work jobs and go to school, things like that. And, you know, the rural Afghans, very hostile, generally. Not always, but generally. The city, in the city, though, that's where there was a real community.
And I was explaining to one of my guys over there, I called him Larry. He was from Kabul, the thought of a Walmart. And I explained a Walmart to him, and he said, wait, you can get ice and milk in the same store? And I'm like, yeah, dude, you can get ice, you can get milk, you can get your taxes done, your oil changed. I'm trying to explain to it, and it just blew his mind. The idea of a store where you can get everything is so beyond a lot of the people that are born.
My dad worked as a medic in Kandahar. He'd often work on kids who stepped on landmines or IEDs left on roads by the Taliban. Yeah, the Taliban can't shoot for shit, so they just rely on bombs.
Certain places' capacity, that putting them in a place like the United States without properly assimilating was going to be a big problem just off the bat. This dude that allegedly committed the murder and the shootings would lock himself in blacked out spaces, all depressed, which I see that, not speaking the language, not being used to what you're doing here. It's not as simple as Iraq, Afghanistan, what's the difference? They helped us bring them over here. This is a major shift in them. And you need to keep in mind, men like that, a lot of them, they don't even know how old they are. All they know is violence their entire life. They've been fighting wars forever. They might resort to violence. A lot of stuff needs to be considered, not just thanks for helping us and try not to do the call to prayer 5 times a day. There's so much involved, and it takes a lot.
Try not to do the call to prayer 5 times a day. These people really are just open about the fact that they do not want Islam to be allowed to exist in America. Like, no freedom of religion if you're Muslim.
I think a lot of planning and not just shoot from the hip solutions. I think that these are pretty much one of one every time.
Omar Badr, welcome back to Uncensored. Good to have you back. You just heard me speak to Tricia McLaughlin, Assistant Secretary for Public Affairs at the Department of Homeland Security. There's a lot of stuff going on here with the administration now in relation to the Somalians, with this issue in Minnesota, with relation to Afghanis because of the shooting of the National Guard members and so on. What is your overview about what is going on?
Yeah, Piers, we know this stuff pretty well when it's committed by people domestically. The overwhelming majority of mass shootings that occur in the United States are committed by white people. The person who shot Charlie Kirk, it's white. People who shoot up schools on a regular basis. And we have the common sense to say we deal with these people individually. This is not...
Exactly. I literally just made this argument. The same people who are like, well, if a minority group is the majority committer of this crime, those same people are not willing to have the same conversation about white men leading in a certain crime category. They shut down and get angry when you try to have that conversation.
Reflective of the white community in America, and it doesn't mean that we have to take measures against the white community in the United States. We say what mental health factors, what ideological motivations. We deal with it with a level of nuance that makes sense. And we have an administration that simply traffics in bigotry. And so when you have an act of violence committed, in this case, the guy from Afghanistan, he was a recruit for CIA death squads in Afghanistan. That's the operative point. It's the death squads part that makes people more inclined towards violence and makes them a risk, not the fact that he's Afghan. And to then take this particular incident and to generalize it about what threat...
Yeah, by the sounds of it, this dude was like a bad motherfucker. Like, probably someone with a history and like I guess cartel isn't the right term for it. Basically, the Afghan equivalent of the cartels. The cartels are basically part of the Taliban too. Like, all the organized drug trafficking stuff is basically an umbrella, under the umbrella of the Taliban, and has been for decades. But and Afghanistan is the #1 world's exporter of opium. Opium is just straight up opium is a big business there. And so yeah, you could imagine there's some probably rough and tumble ass, like mean motherfucker, like drug dealers and drug business guys in Afghanistan that our U.S. military could have hired to do some like death squad work, and then just shipped over here to America. And now they're like we brought some like opium manufacturing murderer into America because he helped the CIA like slaughter some Taliban dudes. It's like, oh, okay, maybe some more vetting there would have been good.
Afghans might be posing, or what threats Somalis might be posing, or Muslims, or whatever. That is bigotry 101. Basic elementary common sense can tell you that this is not how you deal with situations, and it's just incredibly disappointing and disheartening that we're living in a context in which people use that kind of bigotry to try to gain political advantage. People move people's emotions in a way that helps them take a political advantage. And it's extremely disappointing and the wrong way to go about it.
She's doing the evil smile. You can tell she got something good queued up.
Especially if you're trying to build a strong, united country, you don't do it by dividing people like that.
Valentina Gomez, you were laughing as you were listening there. Many people have not been laughing at your video, particularly at phrases like "vote for me so we can kick every dirty Muslim out of Texas." If you had a Muslim candidate in Texas saying "vote for me so we can kick every dirty Christian out of Texas," you would rightly, I imagine, be outraged at that. Why do you think it's acceptable to use a phrase like "so we can kick every dirty Muslim out of Texas"?
Good morning, Piers. And since you didn't have the decency of introducing me correctly, I'll happily do it. Good morning to all of my beautiful people in England. Hello to all of my lads in the UK.
She's such a bitch.
Last time I was there, I had an amazing time. I'm Valentina Gomez. I will be the next.
You can already see Piers Morgan already doesn't like her. That's so funny, dude. That's so funny. You just look at the look on his face. He already doesn't like her ass.
Congresswoman for the state of Texas, and I'm a warrior of the one true King Jesus Christ. And England and Piers, the United States and England was built by white Christian men that follow Jesus Christ, not by a bunch of Mohammeds. So let's get that cleared out right away.
I love this, by the way. Whenever we have a conversation about, like, who's responsible for racism, or, like, racist systems and slavery and all these different, like, trickle-down issues throughout history that black and brown people have had to face, like, white people love to separate themselves from the actions of their ancestors in America. Like, that wasn't us. That wasn't us. We didn't do slavery. I didn't own slaves. I didn't do Jim Crow. I didn't do redlining. You know, go down the list, right? I didn't do any lynchings. But when it comes to conversations about who built America, who's responsible for all the good things that we love about America, that's when all the white boys want to start drawing them direct lines between themselves and the founding fathers, the WASPs that founded this country. Now, to be fair, for the most part, our country's founders were WASPs, white Anglo-Saxon Protestants. And they came to America and they founded the colonies. However, let's not even pretend. Let's not even pretend. I know that she's being a dumb bitch either as an intentional grift or unintentionally, but, like, it should be well-known history, at least, that much of America's fundamental democratic ideas came from and were inspired by the small-scale ways that indigenous groups ran their governments on a local level. Like, a lot of inspiration was taken for America as a blueprint from the Native Americans. And they are not the WASPs. They are not the Europeans. You know, they played their part in founding America. We have the Thanksgiving tradition for a reason.
Right. You haven't answered my question. Why do you, if it was the other way around, you would be rightly outraged. Why do you think it's acceptable as somebody running for office in the United States to be so blatantly... Why would you be so blatantly hateful towards one group of people?
You call it hateful and bigotry and racist and all of that garbage. I call it the truth. America is a Christian nation. These Muslims come to Christian nations, burn our churches, rape our women, shoot our American soldiers point blank, killing one of them in broad daylight, then chanting Allahu Akbar. Piers, my brother is a National Guardsman. He literally puts himself on the line for this nation. So yes, these...
I'm sorry, I had to laugh at that.
dirty Muslims have no place in America and have no place in England.
But as you speak, you see, I'm just seeing a brazen Islamophobe. And people say that phrase doesn't exist. It doesn't. And I'm sure you find it funny.
My brother's in the fucking Coast Guard, bro. He's out there risking his life for your safety.
But I think you can make perfectly pertinent points about what's happened here without descending into such vile hatred towards an entire religion. And there are 5 million Muslims in the United States. Why would you want to categorize them in such a grotesque manner?
Oh, and those 5 million Muslims should definitely go back to their 56 Muslim nations. And let's get something very clear right now in your little show, Piers. I don't fear the groomers. I don't fear the pedophiles. I don't fear the corrupt politicians. And I definitely do not...
Give her a round of applause. Oh my god. Oh, she's so brave, guys. This is such a performance, dude. Oh my god. The, like, constantly invoking Jesus and then going on long, hateful rants that are the opposite of everything Jesus taught. She's so performative. She's absolutely grifting.
Fear the dirty Muslims.
Let me bring in...
Can I jump in here real quick?
Yeah, you can, yeah.
No.
I mean, we should be clear about the fact. I mean, sure, Valentina is just a bigot, plain and simple, engages in the worst kinds of bigotry imaginable, but it's worth...
Just call her a stupid bitch. Come on. If I ever go on Piers Morgan, I'm taking the belt off, okay? I'm taking the fucking belt off, and I'm using it, all right? If someone like this is on Piers Morgan and I'm on there, I'm gonna call her a stupid cunt. And I'm probably gonna get kicked off, and they might not even post the episode, but the memory is all I'll need.
Noting that she's fundamentally un-American because the American Constitution says that you cannot discriminate against people based on religion. That is pretty clear. And so she's engaging in an anti-American campaign in the name of protecting America, which is just irony beyond imagination. So yes, she's a charlatan. She doesn't know what she's talking about. You can tell by looking at her that her IQ hovers around room temperature. To me, the real scandal is not engaging with her directly because she's beneath taking seriously. But the problem is with the GOP, that you have a major party in this country having a candidate running under its flagship, engaging in this kind of really incredibly hateful, incendiary rhetoric, and they do nothing about it. We've seen it with the dissent with Donald Trump himself, with the lawlessness that he has brought to the table and the corruption that he's allowed to get away with, without the party really standing up and putting country before party and before president. And you can see that slippery slope now leading to this level, where you have just a complete hateful clown like this person representing that party without the party objecting to it.
Yeah, you know what?
Leading us towards a very, very dark place in this country.
I actually completely.
All right.
I completely agree with you. There are perfect.
No, Piers.
Oh, that's rough, man. That's rough. Can you imagine if Piers Morgan just continues to get more people like this on his show and gets radicalized to the other side? Not that it would be genuine, it would be more of like these people are even subconsciously grifters, right? Like a lot of them, like Asmongold, for instance, don't even realize that their opinions switch based on wherever the Overton window shifts because they just want to get like approval from the crowd. I can definitely see Piers Morgan shifting leftward if that's where his audience and target demographics start to move.
Well, I actually do agree with him. I think your brazen bigotry is obvious.
Let's make something very clear, Piers.
Yeah.
I only discriminate against terrorists. These terrorists have no place in America. They have no place in the world. And the best type of terrorist is a dead terrorist. And let's look at your Quran. Your Quran, 12 states to terrorize and behead those who believe in scriptures other than the Quran. And that Afghani, that dirty Muslim that killed Sarah Beckstrom.
It doesn't actually say that, and this is the problem.
And Andrew Wolf, who is
All right, let me.
From what I understand, don't all three religious books, like people who worship all of them try to say otherwise, but all three religious books either make excuses for or even encourage the killing of those that like oppose your religion and read other scriptures and worship false gods, as they be called. I know that particularly Judaism and Islam do, and I think Christianity, obviously New Testament, not so much. Christianity's had a lot more reform and is considered probably the least radical of the big three, but like, yeah, the idea that Islam is special in that way is not the case. Not the case. New Testament is worse with that, really. Huh.
Bring in Kasim Rashid. Welcome to Uncensored. If you'd like to say what you want to say.
Yeah, no, I mean, I co-sign everything Omar said there. And I think fundamentally this is where we are as a country, where rather than talking about real serious issues, we have these firebrands. I think she ran in Missouri, got 7%, moved to Texas to try to lose there as well. Look, the reality is that, we need to look at the facts
lost
here.
once.
And the facts tell us that immigration is a net positive in every single way to this country. The facts tell us, a Northwestern University study of the last 150 years found that at no point in American history have immigrants had a higher crime rate than born U.S. citizens. We're talking about Somalia, and we're talking about Minnesota. Well, Minnesota is the 4th best state in the country to start a business and to live and to work. It's the 15th safest state in the country as well. And so, the difference here is that we want the constitutional principles of due process of law to apply. And this, this idea that we're a Christian nation is contradicted by the founders of this country itself. We are actually a secular democratic republic where people can believe or not believe as they wish without oppression. And I think it's critically important that whatever our political differences, we stand united on this basic principle that human dignity, human rights, religious freedom must be protected, even for those with whom I disagree, because at the end of the day, that's what the First Amendment requires, that's what the Constitution requires. If we lose that...
And that is a fact. It's well-known American history, and even, like, the average uneducated American should know this. The people who founded our country were absolutely Christians, and they absolutely wrote our founding documents under the belief that God was real and that Christianity was true. That's why we have the terms like "In God We Trust" or "One Nation Under God" very prevalent in our iconography. And it goes back a long way, even if some of these are more recent. Like, I think the Pledge of Allegiance is quite a bit more recent, but you know what I mean. God is referenced a lot in our founding documents. He comes up occasionally. But the same founding fathers also wrote and codified into our founding documents a separation of church and state. Very core to the idea of America is a separation from the biases of those who created America. What was so awesome about the founding fathers is they accepted that they weren't perfect, that they could be wrong about things, and they wanted to create a system that's perfection was, if they were wrong about things, their own personal opinions and how they ran the government in their time, future people could, the people could elect a government in the future that better represents them. That was the overall goal. Oh wow, junk pile just spawned. Nice. That was the idea of it, basically.
That principle, then we deteriorate into fascism and anarchy, and I don't think anybody wants that.
Rob O'Neill, what do you feel about this? I do feel that rhetoric matters when we talk about these things. You know, I do think that some of the language we've just heard from one of the other panelists is outrageous, appalling, disgusting, bigoted.
Yeah, the founding fathers in many cases were religious minorities where they came from. So yeah, a lot of them were, to some degree, very aware of what it was like to be a religious minority, for the state to not protect your right to worship. So that was codified in our Constitution.
Should be called out for what it is, whether you're on the left or right. It makes a difference to me. But what do you feel about this? I just feel these debates should be had without descending into blanket bigotry.
Well, I mean, debates should be had, but I also believe in the First Amendment. You should be able to say whatever you want.
Oh, sure. Yeah, but that gives me the right to call it out.
Well, I mean, it's designed to protect speech you hate, and I would much rather someone be telling me exactly how they feel than like people in Washington do and tell me what I think I need to hear, and then go behind my back and commit massive fraud. I want to hear. I mean, you can say whatever you want. Someone who's been canceled, myself, say what you want, but deal with the consequences as they come, justified or not.
I've been canceled.
The conversation is needed. I mean, even on
Isn't it crazy how rich all of these people who have been canceled are? Isn't that wild?
Forgive me, but one of the
rich
guests
and successful
called
they
the
are.
Afghan part of a death squad is someone who spent a lot of time with this particular pursuit team, but they were actually called the counterterror pursuit team. I don't know. We don't have death squads, so that's ridiculous. That's violent rhetoric right there itself. But he should be able to say it just when people like me who've been places like that realize, well, this guy's obviously doesn't know what he's talking about. But anyway, but again, the conversations do need to be had, because broad brush stroking everyone, every religion, every color of skin is wrong. But then if your only defense is Islamophobe, racist, name calling, that's nothing either.
No, but I agree. Listen, I've seen it for example, with the war in Gaza, that anyone who criticizes, as I have done increasingly in the last year, the Israeli government for decisions it's taken, having always supported their right to defend themselves and always supported the state of Israel to exist. But notwithstanding that, if you criticize the Israeli government, immediately you get branded now an anti-Semite, which I think is absurd. So I think you've got to take...
Normally I would have been like, okay, that's a little bit too far, but we are coming right off the heels of Miss Rachel, one of the most inoffensive figures in history, like a literal Bob Ross, Mr. Rogers type figure, getting lambasted and elected the number 2 biggest anti-Semite of the year by a big Zionist organization, all because she has expressed empathy for children victimized by the genocide Israel's committing against Palestinians. And, I'm not gonna lie, yeah, they will, in fact, lambast you and slander you as an anti-Semite for criticizing the genocide of children. Israeli interest groups, the Israeli government, Zionist public figures, they will do this. They absolutely will, yeah. I should say Israeli nationalist public figures. Zionist, I feel like this definition, I gotta stress this, Zionist just means you believe Israel should exist. So if you don't believe that Israel should be glassed or dismantled and half the world's Jewish population sent to the 4 winds to wherever, then that makes you a Zionist, technically. I know it doesn't sound good, but unfortunately that word seems to have had its definition changed over time.
What people say, and you've got to analyze it, and you've got to accept that criticizing an institution or a government for decisions they take, particularly in war, doesn't make you hateful of the people. I mean, it was interesting. I thought you posted something which Donald Trump reposted, Rob, which I'd love you just to expand on.
Sure.
You said in relation to the murder of the 2 National Guard members, if you've never been to Afghanistan, you wouldn't understand it. If you showed these people an espresso machine and gave them free coffee, they would assume you were a witch and chop your head off, but let's bring them in.
That is so not true. That is so not true. If you go to the streets of Kabul, I assure you the people there will not see an espresso machine and assume that you are a fucking witch. That is so not fucking true, bro. That is insane. Like, bro's talking like the majority. Guys, do you know what the most commonly used mode of transportation in Afghanistan is? Pickup truck. 4x4 pickup truck. And box vans. Alright, I assure you, they will not see an espresso machine and assume witch. They're familiar with technology. They build IEDs. The Taliban's the main threat of the Taliban is they build bombs. Oh my god.
That's created, as you know, a lot of furore. What exactly did you mean?
Well, I mean, that's obviously tongue-in-cheek, and I actually I used X for purely entertainment, and, you know, that's that. What the point I was making, I have been to places like the Pesh River Valley in Afghanistan where there's families from the Shuriak Valley, the Korangal Valley, who have probably been living next to each other for 10,000 years. But if you make a
okay, now he Bailey's the Mott. All right.
Mistake of someone from the Shuriak going to the Korangal, they're going to cut your head off. This is a very serious place, and the vast majority of Westerners have no idea what they're talking about. Northeastern Afghanistan, northwestern Pakistan, the federally administered tribal area. These are not places like here. If you just grab people like that and say, hey, you're an American, you're going to get what happened here because of the violence and not understanding.
Well, he's the one generalizing. He's talking about all these regions, and they're so different from each other. The big cities and these different tribal regions are so different from each other. Yeah, obviously, like, for the one, what tribal Afghans are we bringing into America? Because for the most part, they're the most radical, most Taliban-supporting groups. They are in the areas that the U.S. was unable to hold much control over, and thus the Taliban had a strong presence there. And like the people who didn't want to be around the Taliban left the rural areas and went into the big cities to be close to where American troops were, where the Taliban dare not attack. Like, what do you mean? We're not bringing in those crazy, radical, rural, like, tribal Afghans. We were bringing in, like, Kabul, like people from, I don't know what you would be called if you're from Kabul, Kabulite? We're bringing in Kabulites and whatnot. People who are from, like, urbanized areas that were sick and tired of living under Taliban rule and wanted to earn a living helping the U.S. government.
The point I was making, I showed a dude, we were going to rescue Marcus Luttrell. I showed a dude from the Shuriak Valley, his own village, the first time he'd ever seen an iPad or an aerial shot. I might as well have showed him the face of Muhammad itself. The guy, he physically couldn't handle the technology I was showing him. A lot of these people can't physically handle the Western culture until they're properly assimilated. That was my point. Pepper.
Oh my fucking god, dude. Like, we're actually just, we're delving into depths of racism I thought were impossible up to this point. Genuinely, it's actually crazy that this is where the conversation is now in 2025. It's wild how we just keep dipping into these, like, times of extreme racism and then entering times of extreme woke. Like, this cycle, this pendulum swinging has to have been going on for longer than I've been paying attention. There's no way it just started once I started tapping into politics. Anyway, I think that's about as much as I can handle before my head just explodes. I'm gonna be real. So if you enjoyed this segment, if you found it entertaining, educational, or enjoyable in any way, leave a like, a comment down below to boost the video in the algorithm. It really does help a lot. Subscribe and ring the bell icon if you want to see more from me. And comment down below Piers Morgan if you want to help boost the video if you don't know what to comment. And of course, if you've commented enough in the past that you've unlocked the hype button on my content, hit the hype button. It always helps to boost the video even more in the algorithm. I really appreciate it. With that said, thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.